He's going to kill me. He found out about us.
These were the last words of famous OnlyFans model, whispered in a frantic voice message before everything went silent. Hours later, her lifeless body was found in her luxurious apartment. Her dream home turned into a crime scene. Naomi Cole wasn't just an OnlyFans model. She was a phenomenon. Born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, she had always been a girl who refused to follow the rules. With striking dark skin, mesmerizing eyes, and a body that turned heads wherever she went, Naomi knew she had the power to captivate people, and she wasn't afraid to use it. At just 21, she moved to Los Angeles, chasing a dream that many scoffed at, a girl from nowhere, making it big in a city that swallowed people whole. But Naomi had something most didn't, unwavering confidence and a determination that burned brighter than city lights. She built her empire online, using her beauty, charm, and a carefully crafted persona to gain millions of fans. OnlyFans wasn't just a platform for her. It was her kingdom, a place where she ruled, where men worshipped her, where she controlled everything. By 26, Naomi was wealthy beyond imagination. A luxurious penthouse overlooking the city skyline, designer clothes stacked in her closet, expensive jewelry that shimmered under flashing cameras. Her lifestyle was the kind most people could only dream of. But behind all the glamour, behind the curated Instagram photos and the flirtatious OnlyFans videos, there was one person who truly mattered to her, Jordan Carter. Jordan was more than just a boyfriend. He was the love of her life. A 28-year-old professional football athlete, he was everything a woman like Naomi could ever want. Tall, strong, powerful. They met at a high-profile party in Miami, where sparks flew instantly. Naomi had always been surrounded by men who wanted her, but Jordan, he didn't chase. He stood in the corner, watching, confident in a way that made her curious. He wasn't intimidated by her fame. He wasn't desperate for her attention, and that made him different. That made her want him. Their love story played out like something from a movie, passionate, fiery, unbreakable. For 4 years, they were inseparable. He was her anchor, the man who knew her beyond the screen. With Jordan, she wasn't Naomi, the OnlyFans star. She was just Naomi, the woman, the lover, the dreamer. But even the most beautiful love stories have cracks. And it started with something small, something that seemed insignificant at first. Jordan loved Naomi. That was never in question. But love and jealousy are often two sides of the same coin. He never openly objected to her career, never told her to stop, never made her feel like she was less because of what she did. But deep down, something festered. He hated the way men looked at her, the way they left disgusting comments under her photos, the way strangers talked about her as if she belonged to them. Thousands of men wanted her, and yet she was his. Jordan told himself that as long as Naomi came home to him, it didn't matter. As long as she whispered his name at night, not theirs, he could live with it. Until things started to change. It was subtle at first. She was on her phone more, smiling at texts she didn't show him, canceling date nights, claiming she was too tired. Jordan noticed, and for the first time in their 4-year relationship, he felt like he was losing her. He just didn't know to who. Not yet. Naomi had always known she was different. She loved Jordan. At least, that's what she told herself. They had been together for 4 years, and he had been her rock, her safe place. But deep inside, there was another part of her, a part she had buried, a part she had never fully explored. She wasn't just attracted to men. It was a truth she had always avoided, dismissing it as curiosity, as fleeting thoughts that didn't mean anything. But when she was alone, away from Jordan, away from the cameras, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something missing. And then Samantha Hayes came into her life. Samantha wasn't like Naomi's usual admirers. At 23, she had been following Naomi for years, watching her rise from an unknown model to a worldwide sensation. But unlike the men who filled Naomi's inbox with crude messages and desperate fantasies, Samantha never saw her as just a body. She saw her as a person. Their conversation started off as harmless fun, flirty messages, playful teasing, a little back and forth that Naomi never took seriously at first, but there was something about Samantha that felt different. She didn't just admire Naomi's beauty. She admired her mind. She asked about her dreams, her fears, her childhood memories. And Naomi found herself responding in ways she never had before she even realized it. Samantha had become a part of her daily life. She started waking up excited to see a message from her. She found herself smiling at her phone, rereading their conversations late at night, her heart racing in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. And then came the moment that changed everything. It was just coffee. That's what Naomi told herself when she finally agreed to meet Samantha in person. It's just coffee. They met at a small cafe, tucked away from the busy streets. Naomi had worn sunglasses and a hoodie, not wanting to be recognized. She told herself this was just a casual fan interaction. But the second she saw Samantha, she knew it was something more. Samantha was beautiful, but not in the flashy, attention-seeking way that Naomi was used to. She had soft blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a quiet confidence that drew Naomi in instantly. They sat down, ordered drinks, and talked. For hours. Naomi had never felt so at ease with someone. With Jordan, there was always pressure. Pressure to be perfect, to be what he wanted, to maintain their public image. With Samantha, there was none of that. For the first time in a long time, Naomi felt like she could just be herself. She told herself it was just a one-time thing. But then one coffee date turned into 2, then 3, then late-night calls that stretched until morning, then secret meetings in hotel rooms where the lines between friendship and something more blurred into nothing. It started with a touch, a lingering glance, a moment that lasted too long. Naomi could have stopped it. She could have walked away, pretended none of this was happening. But she didn't. One night, in the dim glow of a private suite, she let go. Samantha's lips were soft, her touch was electric, and for the first time in her life, Naomi felt something she had never felt before. Something real, something dangerous. She wasn't just playing around anymore. She was falling, and she had no idea that this affair would become the beginning of the end. Jordan Carter had always prided himself on being a man who understood control. On the field, he was disciplined, focused, a leader, but in his own home, he was losing grip. Naomi had changed. At first, it was subtle, little things he brushed off. The way she smiled at her phone, how she seemed lost in thought more often, how she had started going out more without telling him where. He told himself it was just stress, work, pressure. Maybe she was dealing with something and would come to him when she was ready. But as weeks passed, the distance between them grew impossible to ignore. And Jordan hated feeling powerless. He started noticing patterns. Naomi had never been secretive about her phone before, but now she guarded it like a lifeline. The way she tilted the screen away when he was nearby, how she'd step out of the room to take certain calls, the way her messages always seemed to end with a quiet, satisfied smile. Something was going on. Then there were the nights out. At first, she excused them as business meetings, networking events, casual outings with friends. And Jordan wanted to believe her, swallowed his doubts. But Naomi wasn't just coming home late. She was different when she did. Distant, distracted. Sometimes she'd slip into bed beside him, her body present but her mind somewhere else. And Jordan knew he wasn't the man she was thinking about. One night, Naomi was getting ready to go out again. She had barely spoken to Jordan all day, and when he asked where she was going, she gave a vague answer, brushing him off like he was just another fan asking too many questions. Jordan didn't push. He just watched the way she carefully picked out her outfit, how she checked her phone with anticipation, how she seemed more excited than she had been in months. And that's when he made his decision. He would follow her. Jordan kept his distance, watching from the shadows as Naomi arrived at an upscale hotel. His heart pounded, his mind racing with possibilities. Was she meeting another man? Some wealthy businessman? Some celebrity? But nothing could have prepared him for what he saw next. She wasn't meeting a man. She was meeting her. Jordan's breath caught in his throat as he watched Naomi greet a blonde woman at the entrance. He recognized her instantly. He had seen her name pop up on Naomi's phone before. Samantha. The way they looked at each other made his stomach turn. The way Naomi smiled, the kind of smile she used to save just for him. Then, as if to shatter every last piece of him, Naomi leaned in and kissed her. Not just a kiss filled with passion, with longing, with love. It wasn't just cheating. She was in love with someone else. And worse. She had never looked at him that way. Jordan felt the humiliation like a knife to his gut. His girlfriend, his Naomi, had been sneaking around, not just with anyone, but with a woman. Everything inside him twisted into a storm of emotions, anger, betrayal, heartbreak. But instead of confronting her right then and there, he turned away. He didn't need an explanation. He didn't want to hear her excuses. He just needed time. Time to let this rage build. Time to decide what he was going to do. Because one thing was clear. He wasn't going to let Naomi walk away from this unpunished. The night started like any other. Naomi had no idea that Jordan already knew. She walked into the apartment, her heels clicking against the marble floor, a faint scent of Samantha's perfume still lingering on her skin. She didn't feel guilty, not anymore. She had made her choice. But as soon as she stepped inside, something fell off. Jordan was there, sitting on the couch, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. He wasn't watching TV. He wasn't scrolling through his phone. He was waiting. The air in the room felt suffocating, thick with tension. Naomi hesitated before closing the door behind her. "Hey!" she said softly, testing the waters. He didn't respond, just stared. She dropped her bag onto the counter and took a slow breath. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Jordan's eyes followed her every move. Dark, cold, different. She had seen Jordan angry before, after bad games, after arguments, after stress had piled up too high. But this wasn't anger. This was something else. Finally, he spoke. "Where were you?" His voice was eerily calm. Too calm. Naomi swallowed. She had lied to him so many times before, had made excuses, had twisted the truth. But she was tired of lying. "Out!" Jordan nodded slowly, his jaw clenching. With her? And there it was, the moment she had been dreading. He knew. Naomi's body tense, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. There was no way out of this. No more pretending. She had two choices, lie or tell the truth. She chose the truth. The breaking point. "I don't love you anymore, Jordan," she said, her voice steady but firm. "I want to leave." For a moment, he didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Then something inside him snapped. Jordan stood up so fast that the chair scraped against the floor. "You want to leave?" His voice was low, almost mocking. "After everything? After 4 years?" Naomi forced herself to stand her ground. Yes, but she barely got the word out before he was in front of her. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist so tight it hurt. "You think you can just walk away?" he hissed. Naomi's heart pounded in her chest. She had never seen him like this. Never. "Jordan, let go of me." But he didn't. Instead, his grip tightened. Something in his eyes had changed. He didn't see the woman he had loved for years. He saw betrayal. He saw humiliation. He saw rage. And in that moment, Jordan made a decision. If he couldn't have her, no one could. The first blow, before Naomi could react, his fist collided with her jaw. The impact sent her stumbling back, crashing into the kitchen counter. Pain exploded through her skull. "Jordan, stop," she gasped. But he wasn't listening. He saw red. Jordan lunged at her, grabbing her by the throat and slamming her against the wall. Naomi clawed at his hands, her vision blurring, her lungs burning for air. She kicked, she struggled, she fought, but Jordan was stronger, and he wasn't stopping. The man who once whispered, "I love you," was now beating her to death. And Naomi Cole, the woman who had everything, fame, fortune, love, was about to lose it all. The attack was brutal. Savage, Naomi fought with everything she had, clawing, kicking, struggling. But it didn't matter. Jordan was stronger. His rage consumed him, blinded him. She gasped for air as his hands tightened around her throat, her nails digging into his skin, leaving desperate, deep scratches. Her body writhed, twisting beneath his grip, but he didn't stop, didn't listen. Naomi screamed, pleaded, begged, "Jordan, please." But her voice only fueled his fury. The betrayal, the thought of her with someone else, with a woman, played over and over in his head like a sickening loop. His vision blurred. His ears rang. Everything became a blur of rage and pain. All he could hear was his own heartbeat. All he could see was Naomi's terrified face. And then it was over. The moment of realization, Naomi's body slumped. The fight in her was gone. Jordan staggered back, his chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. His arms were shaking, his knuckles bruised and raw. And Naomi? She wasn't moving. She wasn't breathing. His stomach twisted into knots. What had he done? "Naomi," he whispered, his voice breaking. But she didn't answer, didn't even flinch. The woman who had once been his everything, his love, his obsession, his life, was now lifeless in his arms. The panic sets in reality hit him like a freight train. Jordan stumbled back, as if he could somehow distance himself from what had just happened. No, no, no. His hands were shaking violently. He looked down. Her blood was all over him, on his hands, his shirt, the floor. His mind spiraled into chaos. He had killed her, his Naomi. This wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't supposed to end like this. For a moment, his instincts told him to run. But where? There was no escape. His breath came out in short, shallow gasps. He felt like he was drowning in his own panic. His hands hovered over Naomi's lifeless body, unsure what to do. Then he reached for his phone. With trembling fingers, he dialed 911. The call for help operator's voice was calm, indifferent, completely unaware that Jordan's world had just imploded. 911, what's your emergency? Jordan's throat felt like it was closing. His lips trembled. His voice cracked. "I need help." "What's going on, sir?" His eyes stayed locked on Naomi's body, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. He swallowed, his entire body shaking. "She's not breathing." "Who's not breathing?" Jordan sucked in a sharp breath, his voice barely above a whisper. "My girlfriend. I think she's dead." Silence on the other end. Then, "Sir, did something happen to her? Is she hurt?" Jordan blinked rapidly, his mind racing. I think I killed her." His own words sent a cold chill down his spine. It was real now. There was no undoing it. The arrival of the police minutes stretched into eternity. Then sirens. Red and blue lights flooded the apartment. The sound of footsteps. Voices shouting. Jordan barely registered the police banging on the door. He was still staring at Naomi, still waiting for her to wake up. But she never would. The door burst open. Officers rushed in. They found him covered in blood, frozen in place, his eyes hollow and empty, and in front of him Naomi's lifeless body. One officer stepped forward. "Sir, put your hands where we can see them." Jordan didn't resist, didn't say a word. As they pulled him away, he turned one last time, his eyes lingering on Naomi, the woman he once swore he'd love forever. And now, because of him, she was gone. The cold, sterile walls of the interrogation room closed in around Jordan Carter. His hands, still trembling, still stained with Naomi's blood, were cuffed tightly to the metal table. He could hear the faint hum of officers talking outside, the occasional shuffle of papers, the ringing of a distant phone. But inside this room it was just him, and his guilt, the weight of what he had done pressed against his chest, suffocating him. Naomi was dead, and there was no bringing her back. The interrogation detective Harris stepped in, a man with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. He took a seat across from Jordan, flipping through the file in his hands. "Jordan Carter," he said, his voice steady. "Do you understand why you're here?" Jordan barely nodded. He could hardly look up. "Why don't you tell me what happened?" Jordan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His throat was dry, his mind spinning. Harris sighed, leaning forward. "Look, we already have the 911 call. We have the scene. But I want to hear it from you." For a long moment, Jordan just sat there staring at the table. Then his voice broke. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. Harris didn't react. He just waited. Jordan swallowed hard. "She told me she didn't love me anymore, that she wanted to leave." His voice cracked. "And then she said it was because of her." Harris flipped a page in the file. "Samantha Hayes?" Jordan flinched at the name. A flash of Naomi's smile appeared in his mind. The way she used to look at him. How she used to love him. Then the image changed. She was looking at someone else. Loving someone else. Jordan clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. "I lost control," he admitted. "I just snapped." Harris leaned back, his face unreadable. "So you killed her?" The words hit Jordan like a slap. He closed his eyes, his entire body shaking. Yes, he had killed her. Samantha's statement, meanwhile, across the station. Samantha Hayes sat in another room. Tears streamed down her pale face as she answered the officer's questions. I didn't think she'd actually leave him," she stammered. She always talked about how complicated things were, how much he meant to her, but she wasn't happy. The officer took notes, his expression neutral. "And the night she was killed, did you speak to her?" Samantha nodded slowly, her voice shaking. "She texted me." Her lip quivered as she looked down at her phone, clutching it like a lifeline. The last thing she sent was, "Her breath hitched." The officer waited. Finally, Samantha whispered, "He's going to kill me. He found out about us." Silence filled the room. The officer exhaled, pushing back his chair. "That's all we need for now." Samantha buried her face in her hands as the reality of Naomi's last moments sank in. The verdict of trial was quick. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury didn't take long to decide. Guilty. Jordan sat motionless as the judge delivered the sentence. 25 years to life. There was no reaction. No fight. Because deep down, Jordan knew he deserved it. As the guards led him away, he caught one last glimpse of Samantha in the courtroom. She was crying, clutching a small locket in her hand. Naomi's locket. A legacy that would never fade. Naomi Cole's death shook the world. Her fans mourned her. Her story became headlines. A tragic tale of love, betrayal, and obsession. But beyond the media frenzy, beyond the hashtags and the tributes, one thing remained certain. Naomi should have had the chance to live, to love freely, to choose her own happiness. But that choice had been stolen from her by the man who once swore to love her forever.